Hello and welcome once more to, this very special edition of the Open Door Show. This is going to be perhaps the new format as we go forward with this Open Door Show. Always used to be live. And no, I haven't got rid of my business partner, Ian Child. He's just not with us on this special edition because today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Simon Zutshi. Good evening, Simon. Good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening to this.
Hello, Ritchie. How are you?
I'm good, actually. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Good. So look, here we are on Open Door. You might be listening to this on a podcast. If you are, then obviously you can't see us, which is your downfall because I tell you, we're a couple of good looking blokes in our 50s.
We absolutely are, Ritchie. I didn't want to say it myself, but as you've mentioned it, I completely agree.
Little bromance going on here. So we'll put that to bed and we'll move on. Look, if you didn't know, if you didn't listen to last week's Open Door Show or you haven't seen the announcements, I don't know where you have been. But as of last week, as of the 1st of September, 2nd of September, propertyCEO and Property Investors Network, a mastermind, we have joined together in a partnership. Simon, do you just want to tell people what that's about? Just very briefly, those that don't know.
Very brief. So we're still independent companies running in the way we do, but I think we recognize that I train people, we've done it for many years in residential property investing, HMO, service accommodation, that kind of thing. And we don't really teach development for various reasons. You specialize in just doing development. And I love the way you do it about being a CEO rather than being a hands-on project manager, for example. And we kind of met at an event and we realized that, we sometimes turn people away. I know you sometimes turn people away. And actually, we have similar values. We both have a very good reputation in the industry. We really care about our students, etc. And we thought, wouldn't it be good if we could really work much closer together so we could serve our clients at a better level? And we're going to be integrating some of what you do onto our mastermind program. It's just I'm really pleased we're going to be working together moving forward.
Yeah, and I think likewise from our point of view, we get both of us, Simon and myself and Ian here, we operate an invitation-only process for people to come onto a program because we want to know that people, it's right for them, they're right for us, we're right for them. This is a big decision, a big journey for people. We often have to turn people away and we've never really had anywhere formally to send them because we might say, you need to get a bit of passive income. You want to think about building a portfolio or perhaps development. Definitely, we have some people come to us and go, that's just a bit scary. It's not for me. Thankfully, now we have this ability where we can put people into Simon's business. And the great thing is, one thing I think is so important to say, this is a proper formal partnership arrangement signed with the values that we both subscribe to. It's not just, introduce, give me a bit of a kickback. And I know a lot of people do that in the industry. I'm not saying that's wrong. But what we're trying to do here is you're going to start seeing propertyCEO and the PIN business and the mastermind business working very closely together. If we've introduced you to PIN and you're not happy, come and talk to us. We will talk and vice versa. We've got those values which are totally aligned, haven't we, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's an extra level of due diligence, not just for passing a client over. It's saying, actually, because it's come from you, Ritchie, we look after people anyway. We're going to make sure we really look after that person because it's your reputation, our relationship. Yeah. And there's just that higher level of cadence and looking after clients, really. And I think, with our combined products and services, we've both been doing this with a great reputation in the industry and both personally very experienced in our individual fields, we can hopefully look after people and give them the right service. And we do turn some people away. I know you do the same thing, but it's great to be able to give them to a safe harbor, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, this evening, we're going to be talking about purchase options. So we put this together because I think they're underutilized by a lot of people. They're not known. And Simon very kindly is going to be talking this evening about purchase options, what they are, when you should use them, that sort of thing, introduce you to them. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat around for the next half hour, all about purchase options. And listen carefully, follow this through because actually there might be a bit of an introduction, something you can follow on and come on to at the end. So Simon, look, over to you. This is going to be mainly your subject on this webinar. Talk to me about purchase options.
Okay, and I'm going to do it completely within the context of property development. Okay, so it's relevant to all of your clients. Although one of the great things about purchase options and purchase lease options, they can actually be used in conjunction with every strategy. Doesn't matter what you're doing, they're just a way of controlling and ultimately buying property. So let's talk about purchase options. So a purchase option, and actually options have come out of the commercial property world. So all of the big developers, They don't go and buy plots of land and hold them for years and years and hope they get planning. They secure purchase options on that land, which means they've got the right to buy that within a time frame. And sometimes it might be a 10, 20-year period if it's a piece of farmland that doesn't have planning, it's not going to in a green belt, might be on the edge of a village. And the developers know that, with time, the envelope of that village is going to extend, and what is greenfields is going to become ripe for development in the future. We don't have enough accommodation in the UK. There's pressure to release some of the planning conditions, and that's happening to a certain extent. As we know, last year, August 2021, they introduced new permitted development rights, which are very interesting. So huge opportunity in commercial property. So whether you're looking to control a piece of land, a residential building, a commercial building, you could potentially use a purchase option. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, I'm going to talk about a type of development that might work for your clients and our clients, Richie, if that's okay.
Please,
right?
yeah.
People might take a house, a normal home, a C3 residential property, and they might want to turn it into an HMO, a house of multiple occupation. And if it's 3 or more people, it's a C4 planning class, okay? And that's permitted development. However, the government introduced, or many local councils introduced Article 4, which is where they're withdrawing the permitted development rights. So in an Article 4 area with reference to HMOs, you can't just take a normal house, a 3-bed house, and turn it into a 6-bed HMO. You have to get planning permission. Now, with that in mind, obviously, if a council has introduced Article 4, it's because they don't want more HMOs. They feel there are too many of them. And if you apply for planning permission, it will automatically be rejected. And so many property investors and developers don't bother looking in Article 4 areas for houses they could convert because they think they can't do it. However, if it meets the planning criteria, which are things like if you have less than 20% HMOs within a certain radius of the property, actually, you might get planning permission. Not on the first attempt, but on the appeal, you could get planning. Now, that's the theory. So actually, many of our students have looked in Article 4 areas. There's not that much competition from other people because they don't think you can do it. They've checked the radius and the concentration of HMOs. You're often using a planning consultant. And then they decide, right, I'm going to buy this property with the idea of turning it into an HMO. But instead of buying it and hoping they get planning permission, instead they could use a purchase option. So they agree to buy it from the owner, and they get a certain period of time that gives them the time they need to get the planning permission in place. Or it might be something that's got planning, and actually whoever's put the planning in place, and this is a big tip for everyone. You might find lots of sites out there that someone's got planning permission, they're just trying to flip it on. Just because someone's got planning permission doesn't mean it's the best planning permission that could be obtained. So a great strategy, if you understand planning, is to look at what's out there, see, could you reapply for planning and maximize the planning and thus lift the value? Rich, I'm sure you've seen lots of sites available for sale that have got planning already, and they're just not selling because the owner wants too much money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, there's a few things in there, because if you don't buy with an option, what a lot of people do out there, they make the mistake of saying, well, let's go with bridging. I'll buy a site with bridging. I'll buy a house with bridging and try and get it. The trouble is that bridging cost is racking up. And I've seen too many students that's come to us, Simon, that the bridging interest costs have basically wiped out the profit they would have got. So that's one important thing where the option kicks in. Yeah. And then I think in terms of that extra ability to sweat the asset and get extra on planning, I think the important thing is to understand a lot of those vendors that are selling those sites that go and get planning are literally just getting planning almost sometimes to prove the concept. So they go, I've got planning for residential, hence my uplift value. They're not developers. They're not trying to calculate an end value. So more often than not, if someone's just got planning and they're going to move it on, I would say probably 80% of the time you can sweat that asset and you can up that planning. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's take that a step further, and I'll give you a case study to think about. So one of my clients, one of my mastermind students, a guy called Nick Salmon, he's actually now a very, very successful developer. Started doing HMOs, went into development, and he does multi-million-pound developments now. And he found an empty office in the Midlands that was on the market for, I think, £415,000, which was the true market value of that building. Nick, knowing what he knows, knew he could turn that very easily into 8 apartments. It did actually require planning permission. So he went to the owner and said, look, I'll give you the full asking price He explained what he wanted to do, but I just need to have a bit of time to get planning. So he put his planning in. He was buying at 415, but with planning permission in place, that site was worth 560,000. So what he did was he used an option to secure it. And an option, you have to put down some money. It's a consideration, normally £1. If it's a big site, it might be tens of thousands of pounds. But so you put down some money that gives you the legal right to buy that property. You don't have to. It's not an obligation. It's an option to buy, but the seller can't sell to anyone else. What you wouldn't want to do is say to them, yeah, I'll buy your property. Let me just go and get planning. Then I'll come back and buy it, because you suddenly increased it. And the owner might say, well, I tell you what, thanks for getting planning. I'm going to charge you more money. So having an option protects you. And so what Nick was able to do, he actually came to Crowd Property, which is another one of my businesses, which is a development funder. I'm sure people know about that. Hopefully they do. And based on the higher value of 560, he said to Crowd Property, I'm buying for 415. How much could you lend me? Now, most lenders will look at the purchase price, but because Crowd Property, we're set up by property investors and developers, we understand development, which, by the way, many lenders don't. It's surprising, but it's crazy. They don't get it. Crowd Property said, yeah, well, based on a RICS valuation of the site at 560 with the planning, we'll lend you 400,000. So in other words, he only had to put a small amount in himself, plus the stamp duty, which was quite low because of the commercial building anyway. And then Crowd Property also lent him all of the money, 100% of the money to do the build. So one of the great things about using options is you can actually lift the value of the site before you buy it, which means you can actually use less of your money to put into the project, which means that actually the pot that you have might go a lot further, which means you can do more deals. That's another reason for using options, not just to buy you time, but also to give you the ability to lift the value of the property.
Yeah, I think with that as well, we often get a lot of people that come to us, Simon, and they've got a pot of, say, 100, 200,000. Do I put all that in my first development? I say, no.
Oh, don't do that.
Put the minimal amount in. Even if you just park options and forget options, it's put the minimum amount in because you don't know what's going to come along. The beauty of options when they're used properly is your 200,000 can go a long, long way with a lot of sites. And as developers, we're always looking for that next site, that next opportunity, that next deal. So, yeah, that option approach can work extremely well.
Yeah, two comments there, Ritchie. And there are a lot of similarities between what we teach our people, although we're teaching mainly residential, but you're teaching commercial. There are a lot of similarities and overlap. And one thing we teach our students is, if you want to be really successful, you need to have a pipeline of deals. Yes. The mistake a lot of people make, they find one deal, they work on that, they get it done, they say, okay, let's do the next. And it's months and months and months because they don't have a pipeline. So what you've just said is so important if you want to do really, really well in properties. That's the first point. Secondly, again, and this is more of a mindset thing I just want to pick up here, but I see this in residential. I'm sure you see it in commercial as well. People have a pot of money. Say, well, I've got this money. I could use all of my money to do this deal. And I don't then have to borrow other people's money. I don't have to borrow from a bank or bridging company. And whilst I understand that, because they're trying to reduce the cost of their borrowings and they want to make more money on the project, you've nailed it when you said, well, actually, the problem is you're tying all your money up there and there might be a risk. And from an investor point of view, I always try and put as small amount as I possibly can into a project. So if you've got that big pot, you're not tying up all your money, because then you're quite right. You might want to put down some money on your next project and the one after that as well. And even though there's a cost of borrowing that money from a bank or a lender, well, that's, if it means you could do more deals, ultimately you're going to make a lot more money anyway. So a lot of people, they have this cost mindset rather than value mindset. And my belief is, yes, okay, you're going to pay a bridging company some interest, and there's a cost there, but what's the value that creates? If it means you're freeing up lots of your money to go into another deal, well, actually, suddenly it might be a really good deal. So it's not so much about the interest rate, whether it's a private person you're borrowing money from or a bank or a lender. You got to start looking at the value you're getting rather than the cost of doing something.
I think with that, I'll give you a very quick case study from one of our students. So two ladies that joined together. They went out, they bid on a project, a conversion of an office into residential, about 5 or 6 units. They lost it. The agent was so impressed with their submission and how we taught them to submit their bids and so on. He got offered next door off market. They bought next door, and then the agent rang them up and said, the other one's fallen through. Do you want that one as well? Had they spent all their money on the first one, they couldn't have gone for the second one. So, and in fact, it wasn't all their money, it was their investors' money. So they then were able to do double the scheme. They're literally 2 months away. I saw them today, funny enough, 2 months away from a 400,000 profit split between the two of them, where that would have been 200.
Yeah.
Because they kept their money. It's a bit like buses. They all come along when you're not expecting.
And you never know, right? You never know. So let me give you another example of how you can use purchase options. Now, a great strategy that, again, a lot of developers don't really, they think I've got to buy this property, I've got to put my stamp duty in, I've got to put my deposit in and get a mortgage, etc. And obviously all these things cost money, especially if you're looking to flip a property on. Okay, so buying, renovating, selling on is a great, you get a big chunk of cash, brilliant. But there's a better way. You see, sometimes the vendor, the seller of that property or that building, the land, whatever it is, they know that there's development potential, but they don't do it themselves because either they don't have the money, they don't understand that if you've got it, you can actually borrow money to develop it. They don't understand, or they don't want to do it, or they don't have the experience. So what you can do, you can go and look for sites and you can actually say to a seller, look, I can either buy this site and give you this amount, or if we work together, I can maybe actually give you more money. Now, if the seller needs the money now, well, maybe that solution is not going to, and generally when you want to do options, if a seller needs the money now, an option might not be the best solution. But if they don't need the money now, and with the appeal of getting more money, they might say, okay, well, what do you mean? So basically you can form a joint venture where the owner puts the building or the land in, you bring in the knowledge and expertise that you've got from propertyCEO, and you'd often bring the funding in. And actually, if you've got a property that's got a small or no mortgage, it might be possible to bring a lender like Crowd Property, and I mention this quite a lot, obviously, because I'm a major shareholder, but they could come in, clear the existing debt, they take a charge on the building like all lenders would, obviously, but actually lend you all the money. So all you need is the knowledge and the expertise. You could bring a lender in, it's going to fund the whole thing, and then you have some sort of split of profit. Now, that's entirely up to you to negotiate with the owner, but because you haven't had to put a big deposit in up front, because you haven't had to get a mortgage, etc., actually you can make a lot more money. And the minimum you can give the owner that doesn't cost you a penny is this. Let's say you're buying a house and you're going to convert it into something and then sell it on. Well, normally you'd pay the stamp duty on that, and that money goes to the tax man. Well, if you don't buy it, instead if you joint venture and you bring the money in, it's developed and then it's sold, well, you don't have to pay the stamp duty. So what you would have paid in stamp duty to the HMRC, you could give that extra money to the owner. Hasn't cost you a penny more than just buying it, but they've had extra cash. And that might be enough to get them to, you might not have to give up any of the extra profit. And the way you protect yourself is actually an option agreement, because what it means is you basically, they can't go and, because they still own it, they can't go and sell it off. It would be sold such that they get what they're supposed to get, you get all your costs back, and then there's a profit share there. And the option agreement is what basically protects you to make sure that everyone ends up with what they should end up with.
Yeah, and I think to add to that bonus that you can give them, stamp duty, yes. If let's say Crowd Property, and we certainly work with Crowd Property here, they come and speak at some of our events, they work with a number of our students, so a great organization. The purchase, if you're not actually purchasing it, and let's assume it's unencumbered, there's no mortgage on it at all that someone like Crowd Property would have to come in and pay off. Let's assume that was, I don't know, £500,000 to purchase that land. There's £500,000 of interest costs that you don't have. Let's say that's a year or 18 months typically to do the project. Let's say it's 2 years. Okay. Yeah. That could be £100,000 of interest costs you don't have to pay to anyone. Absolutely. So you could use a proportion of that with your stamp duty to go to the owner. And I think the thing that's really nice about this, where you've got to think about who's in the driving seat here, how many other people have rocked up at that landowner's door and said, by the way, I could offer you more than what your land is worth. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing. And certainly with, there's a different type of option, which is a purchase lease option, which is where we actually get to use the asset. If we might have a house that we're going to take on, or we're going to rent it out and then eventually buy it, we pay the owner a certain amount and we make a profit on that as well, which is great. But with a purchase option or a purchase lease option, the way to get an owner to agree to it is really understand what's in it for them.
How can I suggest something that's better than a straightforward sale? And as I say, if someone wants the money now, hey, an option might not work. There are lots of other tools we can use. But this is the point that we teach, and I know you do as well, which is not about trying to take advantage of people. It's about trying to look for a win-win where we can say, look, what do we want? What does this owner want? Is there some creativity we can use to mean that we all make more money, which has got to work for everyone? And that's a key thing that I love about what you do, guys, Property CEO, what you guys do. And that's the coming for the ethical approach and the win-win. And I think if you go out there with a genuine, how can I help this seller to solve their problem, is much better than, well, let me just try and get the lowest possible price I can get for the deal. Because opening your mind and being a bit more creative works for everyone. And it doesn't all, conditions need to be right, but it's just another example of how we can use purchase options to control something that we don't actually own.
Yeah, I think that values thing is so important. I'm a great believer. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a great believer. Whatever you give out will come back to you. And if you do someone over, you pinch, it always comes around. I think the other thing that to add to that is what you want to be careful of is when you approach that landowner is that they believe in you. The worst scenario is that you come up with the idea, you seed the idea, but they don't believe in you. So if you're listening to this, it's about you having credibility. When we teach developers, we teach you what we call 8 pillars. We teach you the franchise manual to be successful. And pillar number 1, before you've even thought about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, pillar 1 is about credibility and brand. You have to nail that. And so many new developers, new property people go out, particularly in the development space, they approach a landowner, something like that. They get this idea of an option, which is absolutely fantastic, as Simon's talking about here this evening or today, this morning, whenever you're listening to this. And they then see that idea, but the person doesn't believe in you. So you've got to get that credibility. Even if you've never done anything in property before, you can do that. You just need to know how.
Exactly. And I think actually it's even more important in development than normal. If you're just buying a normal house, you're taking it on, you can probably wing it a little bit. But if you're a developer, people have a certain expectation of what a developer is. They expect to have, and I won't give away the secrets that you teach, but they expect to have a certain brand, image, awareness, etc. And when they go and check you out, which inevitably they will, if they've got any sense at all, if they don't see the right kind of thing, they're going to be put off. And you're quite right. You might give that great idea to them and they go and someone else comes along and benefits from your great idea. So really important to have your branding correct. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
So
what else?
Yeah. So you want more? Have we not given enough value already? But okay, we'll do some more. So
do some more. Come on.
Just to summarize, we talked about, so there are a couple of ways you can use options. So maybe you want to control something to get some planning in place. Maybe you want to go and raise some private finance. You need to go and find some investors and you do a great deal. You agree it, but you don't have the money. And look, at some point, most people run out of their own cash and you don't necessarily have to use your own money. You want to lock that down to make sure that while you're finding and raising that money and you could show to the person putting the money, hey, I've secured this, etc., you've got time to go and raise the funds. The other thing I'd like to also point out that when you've done Ritchie's training and you've learned how to find lots of great development options, or you've done our training, you've found out how to find lots of great deals, you're obviously going to do the best deal. You're going to do it for yourself. But if you're really good at finding deals, development sites, rather than walk away from ones you can't, because we all have a certain capacity, we've got a certain bandwidth in terms of time and energy and financing, etc. When you're finding really good developments that you don't want, maybe they're outside your area, maybe they're too big for you, too small for you, they're just not quite right for you. Instead of walking away, you can secure it on a purchase option and then you can sell it on to someone else. Mm-hmm. And this is a great way. And deal sourcing is something that a lot of people do, particularly when they're new to property, because I'm going to make some money. That's going to give you the deposits to buy, which is great. The problem is most deal sourcers don't know what they're doing and they're a waste of space, unfortunately. But actually, some of them who get trained and educated, they're good at finding deals. And I'm happy to pay fees. If someone's got a good deal that they found and I haven't, I'm happy to pay the fee. But you want to make sure you've got the option in place so that you've got time to go and find that person to sell it onto. And if someone comes on along with a better offer, you can't be cut out of the deal. So that's another way you can use a purchase option if you're looking to, and you don't know if you're going to do the deal yourself or sell it on. It depends on the numbers, how it all comes in, but use the option to lock it down. It's called a lockout agreement to make sure that you've got the right to buy, but you can walk away from it. Now, if you're going to pass it on to someone else, a very key element of an option is it must be assignable. That means if you don't want it, you can pass it on to someone else. And the final thing I want to talk about is people get very confused about the kind of the paperwork and the legality of these kind of things. Well, and I know if someone hasn't done options before, because you see them on Facebook groups saying, oh, can someone give me an option agreement, please? Look, don't do that. Don't do that. The first thing you have is what's called a heads of terms. And that's where you basically negotiate what is the deal with the owner of the property. So, okay, what price am I buying it at? How long have I got this right to buy this? What's the upfront option fee? And all the kind of things like what access can you get to it to get surveys and things done? So what's the deal you're doing? Now, technically, if you both sign that and you give them £1, that is a legally binding contract. However, the mistake people make, it may not be enforceable. If you went to court and let's say someone comes and offers that person a lot more money for that property development deal, and they say, oh yeah, well, Ritchie told me this, he promised me this. A judge might say, well, actually, I don't, or these capitalist developers, I'm just going to rip the agreement up, and you've got no power. What you need to do is take that heads of terms, give it to a commercial surveyor who can put it into a proper contract for you. And you should have a solicitor and the other side should have a solicitor as well, so that they know exactly what they're getting into. We're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. They're going in with open eyes. They see it as a great solution for them and it's all documented properly. And it's amazing, again, coming back to that cost value thing, many property investors, and I'm sure many developers from your point of view, they try and cut corners in the wrong places. They don't spend the money they need to spend on the power team, whatever it might be, thinking they're being smart, but actually they're causing themselves potential massive issues in the future. So, recognize this is a business. You're going to have costs. Recognize you want to pay good solicitors. Make sure you get ones who understand things like options. In the commercial world, many solicitors do. In the residential world, residential conveyors often don't understand purchase options. So you need to make sure you use ones that do, otherwise it will blow the deal for you. So the final comment is, look, if you're going to do this, educate yourself, do it properly, get the contracts in place to make sure you and everyone is protected.
No, that's absolutely so important. A lot of people think I try and download templates and there's all sorts of stuff out there, and a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. You need the full knowledge. I'll end with just one story before we just round up. A great friend of mine, if you want to take this to an extreme level, I've got a friend of mine that plays with options. He develops as well. And I know another friend of mine is also a developer. They have a little bit of banter between them. One friend bought a site off of another on an option, flipped it straight on relatively quickly. He basically revised the planning. He uplifted the value with literally spending no money by £9 million. And the first guy was gutted, but went, oh, I didn't see that. Now, that is a big site. It's a big game. But that's people at the top of their game. And it doesn't mean to say you can't be there in years to come.
Absolutely.
Start at the beginning.
All I was going to say was, options and purchasing something, they're such powerful tools that, as you said right at the beginning, most people don't understand them. Well, they might think they know about it. My view is if you haven't actually done one, you probably don't really know enough about it because you would have done a lot more by now. Okay. Yes. And so it's really important to have an open mind and make sure you're listening to people who actually know what they're talking about. I've seen supposedly experienced people, some very popular people do a really good podcast, and are they talking about options? And they were just talking complete rubbish. It was obvious they hadn't actually ever done any options. So, whether you're new, it's a great strategy that can use with an option is a tool you can use for any strategy. If you're really experienced and you're not doing options, I think you are missing a trick and you should really look into it.
Okay, Simon, how can people look into it? What can we offer people that's listening to this Open Door show?
So we've just had a bit of a chat about this, really. We do have some online training all about this. Again, it's free of charge, so people can come and listen in and decide, is options something they should be doing or maybe not? So I think there's going to be a link below the show notes. We might even put up a QR code if we can work out how to do that for the video. People can click on that, come through and register. Now, depending on when you listen, that's going to happen fairly soon, that training. So I wouldn't put it off. I'd do it right now to come and join on that training, and see if there's a strategy that might well work for you. And, they're great tools to have in your toolkit. Options don't work all of the time, but it's about understanding when they do work. And when they do work, it can be a real win-win for you and also for the vendor of the site. So that's pretty much it, Ritchie. And thank you so much for asking me. I hope we've given some great value. I hope we've got people stimulated their thinking. It's great to be the first show in this new format for the Open Show.
Well, I think, as Simon said, that this is free to go on. I always say you don't know what you don't know. So consume that information, go and have a look. I'm sure there will be some golden nuggets that you've picked up listening to this edition today. So go and consume that. The link is on the screen below. There's also a QR code. Click on that and go and have a look. Simon, thank you for that. We've enjoyed it. Yeah, it is our first edition of the new format of Open Door. You might well be listening to this on podcast. If you are listening on podcast, pop onto YouTube, propertyCEO, and actually there you can get the link and it'll be in the show notes as well. So grab that quickly because I believe this pre-training is only open for limited time. Simon, thank you very much. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ritchie. Great to be here. And as ever, I encourage everyone to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.